What's going on, guys? Kyle Krabs, Locked On Dolphins. Today is Wednesday, October 5th, 2022. It's Power of the Pod, Mailbag time, all the things that you want to talk about here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, guys? Locked On Dolphins. Kyle Krabs here, your host, lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, co-founder of the draftnetwork.com. And just steering the ship today here on the show. It's all the things that you want to talk about. It's the mailbag episode, Power to the Pod. We're going to dive in. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Dolphins your first Miami Dolphins listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. Pop a cold one open here. Midweek, 6 days out of the loss to Cincinnati. We're on from Cincinnati. We're putting it behind us. We of course have the opportunity to move to 4-1 on the season this Sunday against the New York Jets. The Dolphins as a team, I think there's a lot of things that you can point to in this matchup that you feel good about for the Dolphins. You'd feel a lot better if you had your starting quarterback available to you, but the Dolphins are going to make do without Tua Tagovailoa just fine, and Tua Tagovailoa hopefully will have a smooth recovery from his head injury from last Thursday and will be back behind center when he is ready to be for the Dolphins. For the record, cold one is an energy drink. We're going to start with Matt and Matt's question today. Started listening with Travis, but your draft knowledge, analysis, and film acumen have made the show very enjoyable. Love it and listen daily. My moment of zen question. Isaiah Simmons, the linebacker, former first-round pick for the Arizona Cardinals, only played 33% of the snaps versus the Rams earlier this season. He looks like a perfect fit for the Dolphins defense. What say you? This is fun. This is kind of like October's like building up to trade deadline. There's going to be players that we're identifying as, hey, should the Dolphins be buyers? Should the Dolphins be sellers on certain players if they're not making an impact? Fun window from a team building perspective. Isaiah Simmons is a difficult player because you run the risk when you have these players who are quote unquote positionless players at the college level and you ask them to learn a position. And I think the Cardinals found this out the hard way with how they chose to handle Isaiah Simmons initially when they got him in the building. But the Cardinals put a lot on Isaiah Simmons' plate right away, and he could not keep his head above water. He was swimming in information. He was being asked to make a lot of reads and keys and cues that he had not had to do at Clemson. And I think about Simmons as a talent, and you look at long, super explosive, super versatile, positionless player. For a lot of what the Dolphins do from their zero package looks and their third and longs, I think Isaiah Simmons could bring value, but I don't necessarily know that Isaiah Simmons is going to bring you every down value in something you don't have on the players on the roster already. And knowing that that's a first-round contract, that's not a small investment that you would be making to bring him in. And he's somebody that I think probably I would be a little more apprehensive unless the Cardinals were ready to just punt on the experiment and send him away. SEC with a question. Podcast is my favorite podcast in general. Thank you. And she openly acknowledged it was flattering. My question is about the Eagles. I peeked at their schedule and it is very easy. Plus, they look very good. Is there any worry about an undefeated season? Of course, this is the 50th anniversary of the Dolphins' undefeated season in 1972. Still the only undefeated Super Bowl champions in the history of the NFL. No, the Eagles do look good. There's little question. of that, and their schedule is soft. But I look at the Philadelphia Eagles and teams that are stout and can create stalemates up front. I think if you force the Eagles to be one-dimensional on you as a team, and Jacksonville, of course, got up 14-0, but the Eagles didn't panic, and it was still super early in the game, and it was a wet game. So a lot of the things that the Jaguars would have otherwise done, they were unable to do, and Trevor Lawrence turned the ball over 5 times. He fumbled the ball 4 times and lost all 4. Now, if we get to week 12 and the Eagles are still undefeated, and you ask me this question again, then yeah, I'll probably have a different answer. But this early in the process, we were an Eagles loss on Sunday against Jacksonville away from the fastest elimination of the final undefeated team since 1970. Like, it is still so early. So SEC, no, I'm not there yet. I'm not concerned yet about the undefeated season, but there is little doubt that if you look at the NFC and the state of the Rams, who got their tails kicked by the 49ers, and the 49ers with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, and the Green Bay Packers without all of their passing weapons, and Tampa Bay with the losses that they've taken on the offensive line already and how they've played. Philly's probably like right up there for NFC contenders to contend and play in the Super Bowl. And as SEC pointed out, their schedule is going to allow them to be in a position at the end of the year to possibly be contending for home field advantage on that side of the fence. Dolphins craze. My question for you is, who is a player that is not coming up on the stat sheet but has made a great impact on the team? Give us a name that isn't Zach Sealer, though. I know he's your guy. Thank you. Hope you're doing great, and fins up. Impact player who's not showing up on the stat sheet that's given a great impact. I would point to Alec Ingold and Trent Sherfield on offense. And I also think Connor at center is slept on a little bit, if we're being honest, Connor Williams. Defensively, I know there's some criticism that exists for Jalen Phillips, but Jalen Phillips, from a schemed rush perspective and opportunities in pressure and up the middle especially, I think is playing better than he's getting credit for. I'd also point to Duke Riley as a player who I'd love to continue to see more and more reps from. So I gave you a couple of names there. You can order them whatever order you'd like them to. But that's kind of my short list, if you will. Jam. Been a Dolphins fan since the cradle. I've been blessed to live the Marino years. Bless you. I was born in 89. So I caught the last decade and have memories of the final probably 4 years of the Marino years. Jam, continuing on, fortunately lived the past decade. Shows excellent, has a wonderful, knowledgeable host. Just want to say thank you for the hours of entertainment and learning. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And it's cool to, I know I say this every time it comes up, but like even hearing from different generations of Dolphins fans that tune into Locked On Dolphins and find that it helps them consume the team and enjoy the team in a new or different or even the same way is really neat. You know, it's odd for me to sit here and think that I'm sitting down and I'm not just talking to people my age, but I'm talking to people much with much more experience as a Dolphins fan under their belt than I have, or people that might be brand new to being a Dolphins fan. No, I so typically associate myself, because all the people that I grew up with talking football were the same age as me. You know, my parents weren't necessarily big football fans in general, so it's always great to hear from everybody's individual perspectives and where they learned to love the game from, especially if it comes from the Dan Marino years. So I'm not jealous at all. I'm not jealous at all. As you gear up for the fall, you need the right people on your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs and reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of 810 million people. Then add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can find the right people to hire Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on the candidates with just the right skills and experience so you could quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires and versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week? Nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That is linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Our next question comes from Starscreech, and we found some resolution here, but I do think it's important to acknowledge Starscreech and the question. The question is what to do with River Craycraft. Greetings from the UK, listening to your show every day. What do you think we should do with River Craycraft now that he played the 3 games and he's eligible while in the practice squad? So what's important to designate here is the Dolphins had been carrying 52 on the active roster. Well done, Chris Greer. So they signed River Craycraft to the active roster without having to cut a player. Now, what will be interesting is what happens if we wake up and Byron Jones is able to be activated and can play this weekend. The Dolphins have to cut somebody. I think that's an important distinguishment to make, and that's why I made sure to bring this question up, because this isn't going to be an easy decision right now. If I'm the Dolphins, if I'm activating a defensive player, you could make the argument, well, then we need to make room on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know that there's a player that really makes sense to part ways with. The player who is contributing the least on the defensive side of the ball is probably, well, no, it is. It's Noah Igbenogany and Channing Tyndall. And Channing Tyndall is a 3rd-round rookie who played 500 snaps for the University of Georgia. I'm not mad that Channing Tyndall and Eric Ezukama aren't suiting up. The expectation for those guys is they'll play when they're ready. Igbenogany, I think financially, you're just not going to be comfortable flushing the money down the toilet, right? And taking the dead cap hit, because rookie contracts, the new norm is that those are fully guaranteed contracts. Trey Flowers has looked good. John Jenkins is getting significant snaps as the backup nose. I don't see room on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe you cut Justin Bethel, but he's been probably your best special teams player through the first month of the season. I look at the tight end room where you got 5 tight ends, 4 running backs, a fullback, and now you got, 6 wide receivers. One of those guys is going to have to go, in my mind. Now, maybe you can stick somebody on IR, but let's not forget, Austin Jackson's eligible to come back sooner rather than later as well. I mean, you look at the players that are on IR, Jackson, Jones, eligible to come back. Clayton Fejedelem, as I understand, is not out for the year automatically. Those are potentially 3 roster spots. I do not envy these decisions unless you have other players that you're ready to stash on IR and make that transition. Larnell Coleman's a spot that I look at. You bring, a 1-for-1 with Austin, but you're going to have to lose a skill player to get Byron Jones back on the roster. I really would have a hard time bouncing any of these DBs. Chris Greer is going to have his work cut out for him to decide who that's going to be. Eddie, with our next question. Love the podcast. We have too many offensive weapons. There you go. Which is a total contrast to any season I can remember. With all the depth, Wilson and Gesicki really can't get on the field for any meaningful snaps. Sherfield and Craycraft are getting more looks because they have familiarity with the offensive system. All this is factual. You are absolutely correct. They have proven well in games. I know the season is a marathon and not a sprint, but do you think we spent too much on Wilson and Gesicki in retrospect? Are they trade options or just ride out the season since injuries do happen? Does GM Kyle make a trade, and for what need, in your opinion? This is a great question. I mean, this could be a show, Eddie. I don't fault them for the Wilson deal because I think the Wilson deal happened before the Tyreek Hill stuff became evident that was going to happen. And I'm sure if you knew Tyreek Hill was going to come available, mean, both of these decisions happened before Tyreek Hill was available. So I give the Dolphins credit for that, to not let, don't let good players prevent you from acquiring great players. Don't let Cedric Wilson and Mike Gesicki prevent you from bringing in Tyreek Hill and saying, we got Ced and Gesicki to split wide receiver 3 and 2 reps. No, right? So I think they played it well. But yes, it's a really hard pill to swallow that Mike Gesicki is going to make $11 million this year on the franchise tag without a long-term deal and presumably not a long-term outlook in the offense. I mean, I don't have the numbers up in front of me right now, but I'll pull it up, make sure I'm pounding on the keys so you guys can hear me. Mike Gesicki this year has 8 catches for 71 yards and a touchdown in 4 games. I'm not a math guy, but that's an average of 17.8 yards per game. Still not a math guy, but I can divide 17 by 17 or multiply 17 by 17. I could a lot faster if my cell phone calculator was cooperating with me. What's 17 times 17? You guys are going to find out at the same time I do. 289. Mike Gesicki threw 4 games on pace for 289 yards. Not an asset in the run game. $11 million. Would I entertain trade opportunities? If I get Hunter Long and Ethan Carter back in the next 2 weeks, I'd probably explore it. I don't know what you would get. Can we find a playoff contender that needs a big body up the seam? I'm not losing sleep over it at this point. I'm not. I don't know that the Dolphins feel that way. And Mike's been a consummate professional. I can't emphasize that enough, because some will probably listen to that feedback and say, man, Kyle, that's kind of harsh. But you have a business proposition on your hands now. And if you let Mike reach the end of the year, he is a depreciating asset as far as the Dolphins are concerned, as far as a player who will not be here unless things significantly change. And the longer this goes with this level of production, the less market he would have for anybody to say, oh, well, we'll tag him again and then trade him again. Nobody would do that. So, unenviable spot. Depth with our next question. And I love this lead-in, and this is what I aspire to, so I'm glad to hear this. In my opinion, Kyle's pretty objective for a diehard Dolphins fan. Truly enjoys podcasts, Locked On, as well as his work with draft dudes. And I've learned quite a bit in listening to his takes and insight. Thanks for providing cost-free education. Power to the pod question. With the Giants being somehow in contention while having a serious lack of wide receiver talent. Oh, okay. So now we've brought a team. We've brought a team into the mix. With the Giants somehow lacking contention and having serious wide receiver lack of talent due to injuries, and the Finns thriving with Waddle and Hill, while Craycraft is making noise, Gesicki's fighting for targets, and Sherfield's a good role player, do you see Cedric Wilson as being a possible trade asset for us? I would not eliminate the possibility. And I know that stinks for Cedric because he signed here and he got a nice deal and he kind of got banged up right at the start of the year and he's been dealing with the ribs. And it's of no fault of Cedric Wilson's. It's not. Do I think he can play? Yes. Do I think he can ball? Absolutely. Would he be an asset for somebody? Sure. But, and again, I'll pound the keyboards here. It's part of the charm of Power to the Pod. You guys can hear this as it plays out. They signed him to a 3-year, $22 million contract. That came with a $3 million signing bonus, $12.75 million fully guaranteed. If you traded Cedric Wilson, you would have a dead cap for the remainder of the year of about $1.5 million. You would have a dead cap next year of $2 million, and you would save $4 million. Yes, this is very feasible. This is very feasible. And if you could get a selection in return, if you could get a linebacker in return, if you could get a corner in return, if you don't like the prognosis for Byron Jones, I think those are things you could entertain. Now, I don't know that the Giants necessarily have those players. Their linebacker room is the worst linebacker room in the NFL. I don't think they really have an offensive lineman that's really going to move the needle for you. And they have Adoree Jackson. at corner. They have some youth. They just drafted a kid in the 3rd round, Cordell Flott from LSU, to be a nickel player. That would probably, if the Giants were the team that we were going to point to, they would probably be a draft selection return. And it's, well, what's worth more? Is the player and not having the little extra wiggle room and cap space flexibility worth more than the pick as an insurance policy? That's a decision that everybody individually is going to have to make. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. As always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores on every sport. It's the fastest and easiest way to check out all of your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Freshy Prince, our next question. Not sure who won the coin flip during the Bengals, but I know we chose to defer during the Bills and deferred against the Pats. That's 3 games in a row. I think we should start taking the first half kick to try and not get behind and maybe stay on schedule with our offensive play calls, hopefully playing with a lead. 3 opening drive touchdowns allowed. Your thoughts? I get it. I have not enjoyed chasing the game the last 3 games either. But I do sympathize, and they chased the game against the Ravens because they gave up a kickoff return. But the Bills, I don't know if they did not score because they had a turnover, but they came into, or when they scored against Miami on the opening script, that was the 8th consecutive game that the Bills had opened with an opening script touchdown on the opening possession. A kickoff return, a team that does it every week for 8 games. And then Joe Burrow with what they were able to accomplish in the passing game too. So if the next 3 weeks you're giving up opening possession touchdowns, if the Jets go down the field and score on you, if the Vikings go down the field and score on you, and the Steelers go down the field and score on you, then yeah, I'm probably going to be like, yo, let's take the competitive strategic advantage and throw it away and try and get out in front of a game. I just think it's a little too early, in my opinion, in the season, in the story that the whole season will tell. JZW. I take your point that we don't know the whole story on Tua's injury, but there's no way that the Dolphins team deserves the benefit of the doubt. And don't tell me Stephen Ross is suspended. Fish rots from the head. If it turns out that they hit a concussion from the Buffalo game and put Tua at a risk of a life-threatening injury, I'm done with the Fins. I'm not investing any more time or money in a team led by an owner who is, quote, both evil and incompetent. Jay, you have the right to feel that way. And I think that's an important thing, is everybody has their right to their own opinion on how to react to that. And I will certainly be very distressed if we come out of the other side of this and we find out that indeed there was a conscious effort made to subdue a head injury by the decision makers involved and put Tua back out there, and then Tua plays a second football game in 4 days. As far as the opinion that I have, I am reserving my opinion until I have all of the information. But I understand why people are upset. It was very unsettling and scary and sad to see such a good person, for all of the mud that has been thrown in Tua Tagovailoa's way as the quarterback of the Miami Dolphins for the past couple of years, and to see him start the season with so much promise and then have that, it was sad. It was sad. There's no question of that. And I certainly hope that the investigation finds that this was not nefarious in nature. But I appreciate you writing in. FinFan927. Can you... I beat you to the punch on this one. This makes me happy. I did not see this review. Can you please dive deeper into this team's inability to run when the other team knows that we are? Gotcha. Go back, listen to yesterday. But FinFan, thanks for writing in. Let's see. We got a couple more, including one from Ben. I know we have a couple of these are in regards to the concussion incident last Thursday. So, no, you typically avoid speaking too much on these topics without having all the information, but this concussion situation and shouldn't he have, feels like the latest way for the media to get clicks on their articles. First, it was Dog Tua for being a bust. The whole domino effect of Sunday and then Thursday, I guess there's no question. I just wanted to speak my mind and see if you'd share any of your thoughts on whether you agree or disagree with this just being the latest media slander on our team. At the end of the day, none of these, quote, talking heads on the networks have medical degrees or were present for his evaluation. I think that's the thing. The last thing you said is the important thing, and it's why I try to keep my mouth shut on it as much as I can. Because I'm not qualified to take a hardline stance from a surface level without having the information as dictated by those who are qualified to tell me what to think, right? I don't think this is necessarily a poke the Dolphins organization because it creates traffic. I think Tua Tagovailoa has been a very polarizing but very public and very popular name ever since he played at Alabama. Right. And I wrote this story, not with this lens, but I wrote this story in 2019 when Draft Network went down to Tuscaloosa for the Joe Burrow Tua Tagovailoa game. And the topic of the story was the price of prodigy. And Tua Tagovailoa had been identified since the moment he threw that touchdown pass to win the national championship against Georgia, that he was the latest prodigy quarterback. And that meant anything and everything that Tua would ever do was going to be under a microscope. Even getting injured on the football field is going to be a lightning rod topic. And I think you've seen that with some of the polarizing opinions that come out about Tua Tagovailoa, unfortunately. And it's because he has the name recognition that he does, anything that involves him is going to get more attention than I think a lot of other names, as evidenced by the Tampa Bay tight end on Sunday Night Football, very clearly getting his bell rung, running off the field and coming back in a few plays later, and then being declared as having a concussion at halftime and not finishing the game. Or T. Higgins getting knocked out on Sunday against the Jets, against the Jets, and then playing on Thursday. It's Tua Tagovailoa has that name value that people are going to care more and talk more. Let's see. Pow, 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 Biff. I think that's the proper number of pals. Let me start by saying I've been a listener for quite a while. When Travis announced he was leaving, I thought the run was over, but Kyle, you hit the ground running. It's a guaranteed daily listen for me. Thank you for listening. On to the elephant in the room. Why on earth is the media, who for 3 years now has been saying Tua isn't a franchise quarterback, now saying the Dolphins are wrong for putting their franchise quarterback in harm's way? Why is no one talking about the fact that the sack that injured Tua was roughing the passer? By definition, a defensive player must not involuntarily, unnecessarily, or violently throw him. If anyone cared about Tua, then we should be talking about the play, along with a low shot he took to the ankle beforehand. Now it feels that the media is positioning to make the Dolphins the new post-Bounty Gate Saints. I know this has been long, but I just need to hear somebody else's opinion. I don't know that play was voluntarily so violent. The defensive tackle for the Bengals, the biggest human being on the field, right? Now, did he have to wrap and toss Tua that hard to get him on the ground? No. Tua is not big in the standard of NFL quarterbacks. So I don't know that they would find the deliberate, unnecessary intent on that play. But I will say that when we are ready to see Tua again, if I'm Coach McDaniel, one of the things that I am trying to impress in him is that you have a responsibility to yourself to protect yourself too. And I think that that's the thing with that play is, regardless of whether or not the first read was open, and I believe the read on the throw was a corner route to Jalen Waddle, which was open against cover 2, and you high load the corner, and you had the sideline to throw the ball to. But it's really inconsequential at this point. he had the ball long enough and felt that defender coming. It's 2nd and 7. Throw it away. Scramble for 2 yards and slide, right? And I know Tua is wanting to make a play, but your health is too valuable to not punt on some plays and live to fight another down. And I think when we're ready to see Tua again, I hope that is part of the messaging to him to encourage him to play fearlessly and confidently, but with the jurisdiction that he needs to protect himself out there as well. We have 2 more questions. The next one from Jesse. No, it's still extremely early, but what do you think is more vital this offseason based off the performances so far? A stud 3-down linebacker or a complete package tight end? I still have faith in Hunter Long and Channing Tyndall to turn into something good, but getting those 2 positions solidified could put the Dolphins over the top. That's a good question. I think the defense can work without a stud 3-down linebacker who is a unicorn type player. And I'm going to be quite honest, I don't know that player exists. The kind of consensus top 3 linebackers in this year's class as stack off ball linebackers. Trenton Simpson is more of a nickel, like a Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who was at Notre Dame and was a 2nd-round pick with the Browns. Kind of a nickel linebacker in space coverage type, but he's bigger. He's like 6'3", 225. You have Henry To'oTo'o, who is he's more almost like a Matt Milano type player as a stack linebacker. And then you have Noah Sewell, who is a tank, but has played the least impressively of those 3. And I do not think you would justify a 1st-round draft selection at this point in time. The tight end group is deep, and I want to have the horses in that room to make this running game have what it needs. So I would point as the tight end room is the more important position room to find resolution. But that's me personally. Our last question comes from Dr. Alex. And Dr. Alex's question: if the Finns aren't completely sold on Tua by the end of the season, is it possible they consider drafting a toolsy quarterback like Cameron Ward next year, just like how San Francisco took a flyer on Trey Lance? Couple things, Alex. I think we should distinguish taking a flyer and going all the way in, which is what the 49ers did. The 49ers went all the way in on Trey Lance. They sent 3 ones to go up and get him and pick him number 3 overall. I hope that we get the clarity that we need in Tua Tagovailoa, and he leaves, no doubt, and he does come back, and he does prosper and stay healthy. But if I'm the Dolphins, the reason why I wanted to answer this question is because you brought up the name Cameron Ward. Cameron Ward, if you were to identify the kind of player who I think could make sense for the Dolphins at the quarterback position, and I love Skylar Thompson just as much as you guys do. But if you wanted to turn the Dolphins quarterback room into a quarterback, quote unquote, factory, right? Where you get guys in-house, you develop those players, they in turn can either play or you can trade them for more than what you invested in them. I think Cameron Ward is the quarterback, and he's at Washington State, who I am most intrigued by as a addition to the quarterback room, because with the contract situation being what it is, I would be very surprised if Tua Tagovailoa was not here. A lot of what the Dolphins did was to support Tua Tagovailoa and put Tua Tagovailoa in a position to be successful. But you think about what the Eagles did with Carson Wentz when they drafted Jalen Hurts. That was a 2nd-round pick. You could certainly say, well, that 2nd-round pick could go to a corner or a tight end or an offensive tackle or a left guard. And all of those things would be true. But with us not necessarily knowing and what kind of long-term forecast we feel comfortable from a contract situation with Tua Tagovailoa, I think that's the kind of player that I'd be pretty intrigued by. And I only say that to say this. If you haven't seen any of Cameron Ward from Washington State yet, check him out. He's really raw. He played at Incarnate Word before transferring to Washington State. And he's got a lot of the same natural tools that a lot of the young quarterbacks that go into the league and they have success because they're really good with their ball handling skills and they can throw around defenders and they're athletic and they can extend with their legs. He does all of those things. And I think he'd be a really interesting kind of addition, regardless of whether or not the objective is to have an insurance policy for Tua Tagovailoa, to create a quarterback factory that then allows you to let somebody else invest in that player and cash out at a greater value, or if you're of the school of thought that you want to make a change of quarterback. And everybody, again, like everything on here, is entitled to their own opinion on where they stand on that front long term for the Dolphins. I personally would love to not have to worry about it and have Tua Tagovailoa come back and prosper and be healthy and leave no doubt. But there's 3/4 of the season left to be played for us to continue to collect information before we have to address that question. But just an early touch on a name that I'm glad that you brought up because he's been, as a draft guy, one of my favorite prospects to watch kind of mature throughout the course of this season as it unfolds before our eyes, as a guy who played an incarnate word last year. But that is going to do it for us here today on the show. Hope you guys enjoyed the discussion. It is Power to the Pod. It's all the things that you wanted to talk about. We tabled them all. We had the conversations, and we'll be back again tomorrow for Crossover Thursday. So I hope you guys enjoy. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Fins up. Keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins, your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it.